Shalom, 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 shalom. This is part 2 of the lesson, Salakia. I had an emergency phone call, so I tried to set up this, the whole do not disturb. But once you get when the person won't stop calling you, eventually the phone will interrupt, and your lesson. So it's Satan, but that situation was handled. So this is part 2. I'm gonna try to wrap it up. Again, going into the Yahweh Shai, not only his color, but also not only his color or complexion, but also his ethnic background as an Asiatic so-called black man. All right, a Hebrew Israelite. Now, Daniel chapter 10, verse 6, it says his body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. See, there is the word color. All right, so color is in the scriptures. The Lord is being described in the scriptures. All right, and the individual in that video, man, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. This is Revelation 1:15. It says, "And his feet like unto the brass, and his feet like unto the brass, as if they burn in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters." All right, so it's clear. It's clear, man. And again, this thing came up on my feed, and I'm like, man, that's why the scripture said, to endure sound doctrine, because it's always a cycle of these fallacies that always come back every 2 to 3 to 4 years. And why? And because you still have certain souls that are not fully awakened. That's the unfortunate reality, right? Because we know when the election's fully sealed, all hell is going to break loose. And we're near that. But the fact that, you have all these guys that are, all these COINTELPRO guys, and, all these guys that are twisting the doctrine, and you have Tazariak, the content creator, recently. I just seen him talking about all of us had already marked. We all got the mark, right? Just nonsense, right? Just nonsense, man. And like I stated, man, all right, listen, that guy, man, he's out of here, bro. All right, let's play this. 2 more minutes.
That empty space in the text feels like a clue, not a mistake. It makes you wonder, was this done on purpose? Maybe the biggest trick of all was to leave Jesus' face a mystery, so each of us could imagine the face of God in our own way. We have established that technically...
You see that? That's actually garbage. Because that's what the world see. The world and the heathens have been hanging on into this false hope. Right? Well, he wasn't really described. The reason why he wasn't really described is so that we can all imagine him in our own way. Well, you know what that does? That opens up the door for the heathens to think that, well, he could look like me. He could have looked like us. He could have looked like... Nah, man. He was of a specific ethnic background. All right? That's what he was. And he came for his people and nobody else. All right? The mystery has been revealed.
Jesus would have been a dark-skinned working man, yet ordinary enough to blend into a crowd. But here's the puzzle. If historians can reconstruct what he probably looked like from archaeology, why do the Gospels, written by those who actually knew him, say nothing concrete about his appearance? That isn't just an accident. It's a powerful message. It's the Gospel's way of keeping the focus on who he was and what he taught, rather than what he looked like. It's one of the strangest gaps in history. The 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were written decades after the events they describe.
See? So again, he doesn't consider any other book besides the 4 Gospels, as he states. But you have to read the whole book. All right? You have to read the whole book. And this book, I mean, everybody was an Israelite in the book, so there was no need, it was really ultimately about his teachings. That's why the emphasis was not on his features, because like, how many books was you going to write? How many scriptures was you going to write about the details of a man's physical appearance? All right, because it was ultimately about his message, but you still got to deal with the fact that his ethnic background and his complexion all right, was something that's allocated to a certain group of people. All right, it is the so-called Negroes. All right, it's the so-called Negroes.
Most scholars agree that the Gospel writers weren't direct eyewitnesses themselves. Instead, they were anonymous authors who carefully gathered earlier written accounts and oral stories passed down by Jesus' first followers.
But I'm going to stop right there with this lesson and this video. Again, I just want to touch on that. This is part 2. And again, I have this image right here. When you go into the description in the book of Revelation, Daniel, and it tells you, it's clear as day, the deception of Edom, Esau, the so-called white man, dating back to the Dark Ages. It's being revealed, man. All right, the man of sin, the man of iniquity, man, is being revealed. So let's conclude this lesson with first. Let me see. It says this is St. John 7:38. He that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living waters. So if you believe on Yahweh Shai as the scripture has described them, guess what? Out of your spirit shall flow rivers of living water, meaning what? You're going to have wisdom, knowledge, and understanding abundantly. All right? And hopefully you're going to be a part of the elect. All right? So let me see if I can conclude with this. 1 John chapter 3 verse 2 in the NLT, it says, "Dear friends, we are already God's children, but he has not yet shown us what we will be. Show us what we will be like when Hamashiach appears. But we do know that we will be like him, for we will see him as he really is." All right, so we're going to see Yahweh Shai as he really is, but we already have a description in the scriptures, man. So we have to continue to be faithful. So basically, that's the lesson. Hopefully you were edified as well as I was. Call Halam like Yahweh by Shemel Shah, double honor to our apostles and elders, a great millstone, and shalom, and salutation to the sincere elect. Shalom.